Welcome back to my channel. We are going to be reading, or in your case, listening to Year 2 of the Enchanted Ones. So grab your popcorn, your drinks, or your blanket if you're planning on listening to this while you're asleep, and let's begin with Chapter 22. Chapter 22, When the Train Moved Forward. Time skip, September 1st, start of Year 2. The train smelled like steam, old wood, and excitement that hadn't decided whether it wanted to be joy or dread. Hayley sat by the window with Iris pressed close beside her, their knees touching. Iris leaned her head against the glass, tracing invisible patterns with her finger. Iris looks over to Hayley and she muttered, "You're doing the thing." Hayley looks at her confused. "What thing?" "The quiet thing, where you pretend you're not nervous." Hayley glanced down at her hands. The rune on her palm was faint but present, warm like a living ember. "I just don't want it to start again," she admitted. "Not on the first day of second year." Across the compartment, James was mid-story, arms flailing as Sirius laughed far too loudly. Remus listened with a book half open, smiling softly, while Peter passed around sweets like offering to stay including. Sirius leaned over the seats. "Year 2, bigger halls, bigger rules, bigger trouble." "Please don't encourage it," Remus sighed. Hayley smiled despite herself. Down the corridor, Regulus stood with a group of Slytherins. He glanced in their direction just once before looking away again. Hayley felt her magic stir, then settle. The train lurched forward, and Hogwarts was ready for them. Time skip, McGonagall. McGonagall called Hayley in before the bell rang. The office was quiet, controlled, a place where magic knew better than to misbehave. The assessment took nearly the entire hour. McGonagall tested wand stability, emotional grounding, magical response. Hayley sat, breathed, answered honestly when she could. Halfway through, the inkpot rattled. McGonagall didn't react, she simply waited. "Your magic escalates when you suppress it," she said calmly, "not when you feel." Hayley swallowed. "So, what do I do in class?" McGonagall handled her the grounding stone again. "You stay present, you don't rush, and you let your friend anchor you." Hayley blinked. "My friends." McGonagall's mouth twitched. "They already do." Chapter 23, DOTDA class. Time skip, hallway. Hayley leaves McGonagall's classroom after McGonagall checks in on her and her magic. She breathes in out to calm her nerves, and she notices Iris walking over. Iris looks at her. "Hey, what did Professor McGonagall say?" Hayley looks away for a moment before back at Iris. "She told me to stay present, not to rush and let my friends anchor me." Iris nods. "Okay, but we better get to class, or Professor Tenebris will be wondering where we are." Hayley nods, and together, Hayley and Iris walks to class. Time skip, Defense of the Dark Arts. Hayley and Iris walks into class just before Professor Tenebris starts his lessons. "Cutting it close," Iris muttered under her breath. At the front of the room, Professor Tenebris stood beside his desk, tall and sharp-featured, his dark robes immaculate as ever. His eyes flicked up instantly, nothing escaped his notice. "Miss Potter, Miss Evans," he said smoothly, "how kind of you to join us." Hayley's stomach dipped, but she straightened her shoulders and held his gaze. "Our apologies, Professor," Iris said quickly. "We were with Professor McGonagall." Tenebris studied them for a moment longer, then gave a thin smile. "Very well, take your seats." They moved quickly, sliding into their usual desks near the middle of the room. Hayley set her bag down and rested her hands flat on the table, pressing her palms into the cool wood. "Present," she reminded herself. The door opens again, and everyone turns to see who it was, and Hayley groans as she hides her face. James looked far too cheerful for someone about to be noticed. Sirius wore that unmistakable grin, already planning trouble. Remus scanned the room calmly, eyes observant. Peter hovered close to Remus, clutching his bag. Iris leans closer to Hayley. "Isn't that James's 'I did something terrible' grin?" Hayley moves her hand from her face, and she sees the grin and she sighs. "Yeah, but the question is who is his victim now? Professor Tenebris shot the boys a sharp look enough to slice glass. 5 points from Gryffindor, he said coolly, without breaking stride. Seats now. James mouthed, worth it, as they slid into the empty desks behind Hayley and Iris. A few minutes past the start. As Tenebris began speaking again, Remus leaned forward slightly, voice above a whisper. You all right? He asked Hayley gently. Hayley stiffened for half a second, then nodded. Yeah, just new term thing. Sirius leaned in next, ignoring Iris's unimpressed look. McGonagall dragged you off earlier. Thought you'd exploded or something. James looks at Sirius. Padfoot. I'm fine, Hayley said quickly, lowering her voice. My magic's just unsettled. She wanted to check in. Remus' expression softened with understanding. It happens, especially when you grow faster than expected. Hayley blinked. You sound like you're 80. Remus smiled faintly. I get that a lot. James gave his sister a reassuring nod. If anything goes weird, Prong's excellent at distracting professors. Tenebris's voice sharpened from the front. Mr. Potter. James froze. Yes, sir. Perhaps you'd like to anchor yourself to the lesson. Sirius choked on a laugh. James sat up straight, innocent. Of course, Professor. Hayley bit the inside of her cheek to keep herself from smiling. About a minute later, Hayley notices Lily talking to Dorcas, but she sees her smile not reaching her eyes like they did when she introduced herself when she was in first year, and Hayley's expression softened sadly as she thought about the last time Marlene told her about Snape and Lily. Sirius flicked his wand under the desk, sending a folded bit of parchment skidding towards James. It unfolded itself into a crude doodle of Tenebris with bat wings, and James snorted. Peter followed suit, whispering, I heard he sleeps upside down. That's a rumor, Remus muttered. A hope, Sirius corrected. Hayley felt a laugh bubble up before she could stop it. The tension in her chest eased, warmth replacing the tight pull of magic. James leaned forward again. See, completely stable, laughter-based magical therapy. That's not a thing, Iris whispered. It absolutely is, Sirius said. We just invented it. Remus shook his head fondly. You're all going to get detention. Together, James said proudly, like family. Half an hour later. As Hayley successfully disrupted her enchantment, she felt it steady, calm and controlled. She glanced back briefly. Remus gave her a small, approving nod. James flashed a grin. Sirius gave her an exaggerated thumbs up. Peter smiled, relieved. She felt anchored. Everyone finishing up and heading to their next class. As chairs scraped back and students began packing up, Sirius stretched dramatically. Well, he said, loud enough for Tenebris to hear, that was delightfully grim. Out, Tenebris said flatly. They poured into the corridor together, laughter echoing off the stone walls. James slung an arm around Hayley's shoulders. You did great, by the way. She smiled, warmth settling deep in her chest. Second year didn't feel so terrifying anymore, not with anchors like these. Chapter 24, Dancing Teacups and Worries. Time skip, hallways to Charm's class. Hayley and Iris walks over to their next class talking. I wonder what we're going to learn about in Charms. Same Iris, I'm just hoping that my powers don't play up while I'm in class. Iris stops to look at her. You're with me, I'll make sure they won't. Hayley stops too and looks at Iris, and she smiles before noticing Lily walk past slightly angered and worried before she feels an arm wrapping around her. James smiled at his sister and Iris. So, the both of you, since I'm going to Hogsmeade in a couple of weeks, do you want anything? Sweets, joke shop stuff? I hear Zonko's has something that explodes into dancing teacups. Iris perked instantly. Dancing teacups. Hayley looks at James suspiciously. Why are you being nice? You only do this when you're either feeling guilty or planning someone illegal. James placed a hand over his heart in mock offense. Wow, that hurts. I can't spoil my favorite sister. You have one sister, Hayley shot back. And she's my favorite, he replied easily, ruffling her hair despite her half-hearted attempt to dodge. So, anything you want. Hayley hesitated, glancing once more down the corridor Lily had disappeared into, that strange, unsettled feeling still in her chest. Then she sighed softly and looked back at James. Chocolate frogs, she said at last, and maybe some of those calming draft sweets, just in case. James's grin softened just a fraction. You got it. The bell rang sharply, echoing through the halls. Charms, Iris said, tugging Hayley forward. Come on. Hayley and Iris ran to their classes.